So let's try and modify this workflow. And we're just trying to put logic in our workflow. So for us to be selective in that, so we can go back to our code. We can go back to our code. That is our build. So let's look at our apply, right? Let's look at our apply. So we can try to use conditions, or we can try to either use conditions, or we can create an apply to use a different workflow, right? Let me just come here. So we can have our apply to use, let's say, a release workflow. So we can build a release workflow. We can test it here first. So for a release workflow, we can do like something like this. So we can add a file, and I can call that release. This is when we are doing our deployment, we can do a release, right? Release .yaml, release.yaml, and we can give it a name, and that name is release, right? This is the workflow we will use for release. But then our trigger, we can say on workflow dispatch. Right. So we are setting a manual trigger. We're setting a manual trigger on how we want to apply, right? So we can either set a manual trigger, or if it's automated, and then again we can have inputs. So we can, for a workflow dispatch, so we can have inputs, and inside of those inputs we can have our environments. We can say our environment, then the type. Again, all these are basics of GitHub Actions. So you can look at some of the type is environment, then it is required, so that you actually supply what environment required is true. Then we will give options. So the options that we have in terms of our environment, we can pass it as a list. So we have dev, we have stage, and we have prod. Okay. We have dev, stage, and prod. Then we're going to say the jobs. So jobs we're going to have our jobs. And the first job we can have is, first we can say just release. We have our release job, and our release job, we can say it uses release job. It uses right? It uses this build.yaml, that build.yaml. So it uses that GitHub workflows, and the name of the workflow is build.yaml. It uses this build.yaml, which is our main build, but because it's on a workflow dispatch, we are going to trigger it, right? It uses that. Then we can say with these are input, with our target. So right here with our target environment. So we will go and modify this build so that it accepts this input. So input, I can have it as target environment, target env, right? Target env, which will be the value of inputs. This is the context, the value of input dot environment, right? So this workflow will have an input for a target environment. So it means that in this workflow, I need to define what a target environment is. I need to define a target environment because it's reading this target environment from this inputs.environment, right? But it has the options here, right? So I can do that. Then
correct, the extension of a build file is without A.
Huh?
The build file is without A, is YML, not YAML.
Okay, thank you. Good catch.
Well, actually, either way works really. With or without A, it still works.
Now it works, but what he's saying, because we are calling it, if I have an A, it will be looking for a file with an A.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I see. Okay.
All right. So